Welcome to One on One with the Grim One. I am your host, the Slayer of Posers, with the most master of disaster, the most electrifying man in corpse entertainment, the Necrosexual. And joining me from Venomous Concept and one of my favorite death metal and grindcore bands of all time, Brutal Truth, we have one of the most legendary growlers and screamers in extreme music today, Kevin Sharp. Kevin, how the hell are you, baby?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty excited for this.
Hell yeah. I listened to Extreme Conditions, Demand Extreme Responses by Brutal Truth for the first time when I was a teenager. It gave me a throbbing, extreme heavy metal hard-on that still lasts to this day. My circulation was never quite the same after that, but it's a huge, probably one of my favorite death metal or just favorite albums in general. So I'm super stoked to talk to you. And of course, you're in a newer band, Venomous Concept, that has an album coming out in August on Season of Mist, known as Politics versus the Erection, baby.
Sure thing.
So we're super...
Speaking of being engorged from the beginning.
Absolutely.
I guess the erection's a common thing.
Yes, totally, baby. So, Kevin, this is One-on-One with the Grim One, so we talk about a lot of topics, but one of the things we discuss, the guests will choose one album that holds a special place in their heart. And I know it might be hard for you to select just one, but tell me about the band or the album that changed your life.
Well, it's actually kind of a really funny story. I was with my mother hanging out downtown, and it's hard to describe it. There's a cult restaurant in Atlanta called The Varsity. It sells hot dogs and onion rings that will fucking kill you looking at you. But nonetheless, it's like this really weird place that has like old school desks. And you just think that you're back in elementary school and there's a TV in the very front. And you just sit around and eat crappy fast food and watch the TV. It's absolutely American, iconic, crappy restaurant or whatnot. So she had one that she had to do, and she parked me at this place. I probably was around 13, maybe. I don't know, around there, and I was, mindlessly staring out the window looking for answers, and these punk rock dudes walked by, and they were, blue mohawks and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, what the fuck those guys are doing, man? They look interesting. And I walked out the door and I followed them down a place called the 688 Club, and Corrosion of Conformity was playing there with a band called DDT and another band called Neon Christ. And I picked up their first record there and became lifelong friends with those dudes. They were like, when they recorded Blind, a bunch of those dudes stayed at my house in New York. And basically that was it. I went and I got turned on. I thought it was super, super, super wild. And then I just fell in love with the record and just accidentally stumbled across it. It wasn't like an older brother, kid down the street, or any of that kind of shit that turned me into a fucking idiot. It was just a complete accident, so to speak, and a kind of a glorious one. And I guess with metal, it was more along the lines of because like in the punk world, Venom and Motorhead were completely acceptable entities in the punk scene, because basically they were like punk bands, only they sang Satan instead of Anarchy, and Motorhead sang Chicks, and rock and roll. But like the first Sodom demos, that was like the first metal shit that I was like, wow, is that a chainsaw down that dude's throat? It sounds amazing. I think I want to get into this. But it all started with the Corrosion of Conformity gig and picking up the record there. My mom actually picked up a Motorhead record for me as a joke, and it all started avalanching. At the time, interesting music you could only find in various places. Like, strangely enough, Saturday Night Live was a place that you could find interesting music, like Devo, like all these old school bands, Talking Heads, Fear,
A little bit later, but also Faith No More,
Well,
Living
exactly.
Color had great Saturday Night Live sets, and it's like
Exactly.
night and
But
day watching.
yeah, Belushi came from that world, a totally weird world, and I can remember the Ramones being on a thing called Sha Na Na, which was like another kind of Fridays, Sha Na Na, Saturday Night Live, the sketch comedy bits, that on the weekend that you look forward to. But I'd have to say, first Corrosion of Conformity record and first gig was all one.
Wow.
And it was pretty big, and it changed my life. And and here we are, still doing it years later. How weird's that?
Sounds like a happy little accident, as Bob Ross would say, and a lot of
A
heavy
happy,
metal history is filled with those.
exactly, man. Fluffy accident, maybe fluffy. Yeah, happy little accident.
Wow. So you always remember your first. And what a first experience that must have been, going to a crappy fast food restaurant with your mom and then just following some punk rocks to see a band like Corrosion of Conformity. It sounds pretty surreal in hindsight.
It's absolutely weird because you think like you get a little older and you think about I don't know your personal experience with your first, but it's weird how like things happen. If those dudes had not walked by and entertained me, how my life might have taken a different route. Who knows? Because I didn't have that person forcing me to listen to something. I just was like, those dudes look weird. And there you go.
I also find it amusing when you watch older movies or movies from the 70s or 80s. They usually cast, like in Terminator, the opening scene, there's like punks that get killed by the Terminator that are fucking with him. Or like Star Trek, The Journey Home, there's punks on the school bus, and Spock gives one of them the Vulcan death grip because they're being obnoxious and listening to music. And usually metalheads and punks are always cast as the bad guys. But really, I think that, casting the jocks or the popular kids would be a little bit more accurate to be the bad guys, because the metalheads and the punks would normally be the ones that are pissed off or pissed on by society, the dregs of society, so to speak. But you guys endured, especially back in the day when this type of music was still being created.
Yeah. I mean, I would say 100% that I was not well received in my high school years. But it's so funny because they end up like, trolling your page because you did something interesting with yourself. You traveled or saw some things that they meant. They may have just hung out in the TJ, the Fridays or the Applebee's on a Friday night, which is totally cool if that's what you want to do and that's your thing. But, it's funny that you see the curiosity multitudes of years later, so.
Yes, too loud for the crowd, as Venom would say.
All right. Yeah. We're going to get wild. Oh, the drummer's going to need refreshment for this one.
Yeah. I think Kronos and Paul Stanley have the best in-between stage banter of all time.
Without question. I feel like never saying anything between songs after just being – actually, my first show with Lockup was one of those things where, can you imagine some dudes say, okay, join my band. We got a gig like in 10 days, and it's opening for Venom in Colombia.
Wow, no pressure there, baby.
No pressure at all. Like Conrad's watching on the side of the stage, and you're like, oh, God, I feel terrible. I hope I remember the words.
Yeah, who's got time for stage banter when you still have to remember the lyrics?
Well, who's got time for stage banter when you're looking off to the side and you say, I'm going to fail miserably if I open my mouth?
What was that like, meeting Kronos, if you had that chance?
Oh, it's super cool. I mean, got into a lot of mischief, as you do in SA.
Mayhem with Mercy.
Danny's a great drummer, their drummer, and super nice guy. Andy Pope, he's always on the road with those guys. Yeah, I mean, they're really, really cool people, you know.
There's also a little bit of irony for somebody touring on the road with Venom, whose last name is Pope.
Yeah, exactly. That I didn't even think of that because just that's hilarious, man.
Right.
But let's just face it, the Pope isn't all that great of a person anyhow. So
yeah, pretty evil in his own right. If
yeah,
you look
well,
up.
I forget the Polish guy who
Oh,
was
Ratzinger. Or no, the one before Ratzinger, John
yeah.
Paul.
No, it was Ratzinger, wasn't
Yeah.
he?
Yeah, Ratzinger was from Germany, I think. The one
The
before
one
him was.
the one that retired.
Yeah, Ratzinger, yeah.
Yeah, he was not a good person.
Mm.
There was all sorts of things about him that were wrong, right down to like the stereotypical uh, pedophilia kind of.
Yeah, it's a pretty big one.
He had a lot of secrets, man, and wasn't a good person. And at the end of the day, he did look like he belonged in on the dark side.
Right? Yeah, he looked like a Sith Lord.
Oh, are you kidding me? Without a question, put cloak on him and oh, Jesus.
The darkness has come full circle. So,
Absolutely.
Kevin, before we talk about the new Venomous Concept album, I do have one question. The most important, serious questions first. But going back in time, reading the liner notes of certain albums, you have a very specific nickname that you've accrued over the years. Tell me about the origin of your nickname.
Which nickname is that?
I believe it's Kevin the New York Shithead Sharp.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Is that the nickname?
I can't remember what album it was, but it definitely sticks in my head as seeing it from somewhere. So I was just wondering if there was a funny story behind that or maybe not. Who knows?
You know what? I don't know. I've been called a lot of things over the course of time, and I think that's probably one of the not so bad things.
Yeah, it's a good nickname. I would hope it would be an endearing nickname. Certainly, my friends and I rag on each other, so maybe it's.
That's a part about like being in a band. You got to get your ball. You can't be in a band and have sensitivities or thin skin because it's just every man for himself, especially on tour. The weakest man gets hammered constantly. It's a brutal place, It's not for thin skins or sensitivities,
Not for thin skin, and certainly none of the bands you played in have had any thin riffs either. And with Venomous Concept, if you want to talk about a dream team for extreme metal, you have Danny Lilker, of course, Buzz Osborne at one point, Danny Herrera from Napalm Death, Cheeseburger, yourself, one of the best growlers of all time, and of course Shane Embury. So that is like firing all cylinders of brutality right there.
Yeah. And it's it's more along the lines of, and also the same thing happened with the Lockup. It's just a kind of a collective of friends that have been around for a minute. Everyone's. There was a period where everyone was like, you would bust your balls. You're in a super group or stupid shit like that, and you just like, whatever, dude. I mean, if you're working at a 7-Eleven down the street, and there was an opening, would you try and get like one of your buddies in on the band or in you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to like, try and get your friends to work together, to spend time. And now it's to the point where, we traveled all our lives together, and we all live in separate parts of the world. So it's really the only way to actually keep in touch. And these are my childhood friends. So they come and go. They as in terms of like Barker is off doing something else right now, but it's nothing personal. He's just off doing something else, and they're just friends of mine, we know each other's kids and that's that,
Of course. Birds of a feather fly close together.
And crush
skulls together, yeah. Well, I admire your humility, and I also have always admired the work ethic of Danny Lilker, of Buzz Osborne, of course, of Shane, because in addition to their main bands, they've had many projects over the years, and they're always cranking out the riffs on several fronts, and Venomous Concept is just one of those bands. And for the heavy metal hellraisers listening at home, you can listen to a new single known as Lemonade from Venomous Concept. Tell
Sure.
me about the inspiration behind your new album.
Okay, it's really interesting because you know, a lot of people are going to believe this or that when they just see the cover, but it's not the whole concept. You know, the whole concept is more of it's not about politics per se. It's more along the lines of how social media has adapted a role in politics. And actually it to a certain degree super sad for me because when we're talking about that scene back in the day when I stepped into I Hate God or Corrosion of Conformity gig and that sort of thing, there was a scene where there was punks and skins and weird metalheads and cross dressers and all sorts of weird types, and everyone just grew to accept each other's differences, because it was really the interesting versus the not interesting concept, you know. And this whole thing with social media has completely distorted and disrupted what I consider a great thing, and the division is strong, and it's more like a piss take on meme art, and it's really crude looking, and you'll get to see the Twitter cock and a few other characters in the artwork. The Twitter cock is a good one. It's just a sweet hot pink cock with a Twitter flag coming out of the pee hole, and and then
very strong imagery.
Yeah, very strong imagery. There's the Dimpublican clown shoes, which is red and blue clown shoes. You know, the devilish donkey versus the idiot elephant. I wrote a song called "Cap Kill All Politicians." I'm not going to like any of them. They're not going to have my team. They have never been team brutal. They are what we all collectively did not like when I was getting into interesting music, and now everyone's sort of picked this team and disrespects each other's opinions, and really, I don't know, man. What's your thoughts on social media versus politics? You know?
Yeah, it's a hot mess. I think that the 2016 election, especially, is going to be remembered as one of those turning points in history with the role of social media and just like a massive disinformation campaign that's still going on today. And
it's really weird that you brought that up. How there was a pivotal role in 16, and I'm just sort of connecting dots because that's what you do when you share information with each other, and you talk about things without telling the other person that they're a fucking idiot right out of the gate.
Right. Yeah.
But back in the day, when Reagan, you're relatively young, so I'm certain you don't remember much of the Reagan, right?
Yeah, it was not completely before my time, but definitely before my memory was formed. So yes, a little bit before my time.
Okay, so interesting enough, in a similar context, and I never connected dots, is that Reagan was an actor.
Yeah.
And he was involved in that aspect of it, and I just never connected the dots that the way politics evolved at that point, because beforehand, there would be debates and everyone would sit there it was a totally different world. And then an actor got into politics, and then that speaking in front of a camera became a serious way of communicating politics. So there was a change in that world. And I guess just to go ahead and tie more dots together, both of them tried trickle down economics. Back in the day, it was called Reaganomics. And And it created a lot of interesting music. There was a lot of people that were super pissed off about this, that, and the other. And there are a lot of people pissed off about this, that, and the other now, you know?
Yeah. And I guess the plus side is there's still a lot of great music being made now. But
Exactly.
yeah.
We're, matter of fact, because there's nothing else to do other than create music, there's 2 new VC records in the can. And we're finished, well, not finished, but like the next one's pretty much there. And while I was finishing up my bit, Shane and John were finishing up the VC6 on their end. And then on top of that, there's a Lockup record that I'm doing right now as well. So, I don't know exactly where we'll go in terms of live music. I'm not really, there's debate. It's debatable as to whether we'll ever see the Corrosion of Conformity gig that I went to when I was a kid. You know, I know that Destruction did a show over in Germany, and did you hear about that one?
Was it a drive-in show?
No, this was straight up gig, man.
Oh wow!
But it was in a 1,000 capacity room, and only like I think only 300 tickets were sold. So like, how that, if it ever happens, it could very much not be this what everyone considers quote unquote normal. So we're at a 180 where everything's flipping, and everyone's trying to figure out how to do what we do and still entertain fans. And I guess the thing that's sad to me is that, like, you know, my world consisted a lot of meeting people at the t-shirt stand, and you know, people huffing and puffing, spilling beers on me, and you know the scene. You know how it is. There's the goon at the merch booth, and everyone's like breathing heavy in each other's faces and stuff like. I don't know, man. It's weird, but I'm trying not to think of it as something, you know, super terrifying. I just consider an opportunity. We could be in a situation where that particular world is the 8-track tape, and we're moving into some other format, some other way of doing this, whether it's shit like this or streamed concerts or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Hopefully this
Brave New World.
Yeah, hopefully this coronavirus version of things is the 8-track tape, and sooner than later, or at least in the next year and a half, however long it takes, we will eventually return to shows as we know it. But it's going to be a while, I think, when shows.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
we had everything taken away from us. Okay, now we'll see what governments will allow to happen. You know, the EU is about to shut down Americans traveling to Europe. You know, so.
And also the whole Live Nation issue, their monopoly, and they're trying to pull all sorts of fast ones. So it's going to be very difficult for bands to tour. It's already difficult for bands to tour and survive on the road, or to even break even on the road.
Well,
so,
you know,
yeah.
I also tour manage and stuff like that. So like I've done plenty of Live Nation tours and stuff like that. So even before all of this, contracts were just paper with those dudes. You go in at the end of the night and they'd say, my piece of paper says this, and you'd say, well, I have this piece of paper that says that. And they're like, well, we'll give you this. And that's Live Nation.
Wow.
And they do things like, we're selling slow tickets in Cleveland, so we'll just put that in a toilet there and invest all our energy in this other market where tickets are selling. So you could play like a show where it'd be a rager, and then the next day you'd be in a spoken word room in Cleveland wanting to slit your throat, you know. So yeah, they've never been kind or good, or they're. I was hoping, you know, that they were just going to lose everything. Really, to be quite honest,
that might be the case. I do hope that it is the thing that sinks their ship. Especially that they nearly have a monopoly. Well, so we'll have to just see. But I do think if
Yeah,
there's
well, I
one
mean,
thing, yeah.
this could very well change that variable. You know what I mean? It could, like, who knows? Booking agents could become a thing of the past. I mean, anything's on the table right now.
Yeah, it is definitely new territory. But I think the one glimmer of hope that we do have is metalheads, especially, have been always super resourceful, DIY style. So if it's a return to that and just building community from the ground up, however that is, we're still learning every day. It's a new challenge, but I think
you're dead right there. I think that, like, a lot of the independent clubs are not going to survive this, and I think that it's going to be back to basics. I mean, I was there in the beginning before there was agents, and there was John from Incantation booking a string of shows out to Milwaukee, you know, and we get in the van and we'd show up at the venue, and if they gave us money, they gave us money. If they gave us food, they gave us food. Nobody complained. We just kind of clicked along. That campaign for Musical Destruction tour that we did with Napalm Death and Carcass and Cathedral.
Yeah, what a loaded tour package that was. Whew.
Yeah, exactly. But we got paid $50 a night.
Yeah.
You know?
There's the cost of being in heavy metal history.
Yeah, well, that's the price of being first, but on the back end, you do get like that back pay. If you do get like, but I don't know. Again, the festivals in Europe, will they ever happen? Will 100,000 people be allowed to sit in a field and listen to metal again?
Yeah, these are definitely troubling questions, but you do bring up a good point. And if we can allow me to get nostalgic for a second with you, tell me about one of your favorite old school tour memories from back in the day.
Oh my God. I mean, there's just, from each package, it was, because the reason to tour is to laugh, there's so many stories of infinite humor, oh my God,
Loaded question, huh?
Okay, this is funny. We were playing in Berlin, and it's like one of those collective things where this and that tour collides, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're playing a venue. One stage is big and one stage is smallish, and Black Sabbath is on one stage and you're on the other, and you're doing your thing, right?
Wow.
And I came up with this concept of we had a Dutch bus driver who was driving us, and he was the president of the Elvis Presley fan club in Holland, right? And we got him to go out in the front with a giant white light over his head, and he sat there and sang in the ghetto a cappella while I took an angle grinder to some car hoods and carved in the Brutal Truth logo and the contact mics. So it's just like, like all this crackling hot noise with this guy going in. Cold in gray Chicago morning, another little baby born in the ghetto, and his mama cried. And you got like all these, like, this is Berlin, man. So you got like all these dudes in their sweet, like, scorpion striped legged trousers with the mustaches, and they're just like, what is this? I don't understand what's going on here. And I'm just being brutal. Just stick with me, man.
Keeping it brutal on tour.
Yeah, it was, there was infinite amounts of comedy in terms of the concept was white trash versus white noise.
Definitely sounds like some brutal performance art right there.
It was brutal. It was so brutal.
So going in to 3 decades of playing this extreme music, how do you stay motivated to keep it brutal?
I think this is either who you are, or you're either a tourist or you're a lifer. And at a certain point, I remember I was having a conversation one time with Bill Steer when he was asking me about Dan and his semi-retirement. And he goes, I don't understand that, I don't understand, like, stopping like that. what do you do if you stop? I mean, like, and I was like, I don't know. And he goes, you know, when I was a kid and I was first doing this, I figured, you know, we did a record, and I was like, oh fuck, we did a record. And then we did like a couple of tours of Europe. And then, you know, I figured after a couple of tours, maybe a record or two, that I would settle down in the little town or village that I'm from and have like a normal life and a normal job. And at a certain point, you just realize this is who you are. When Brutal Truth stopped doing music for a minute, I was doing a band in Australia called Damaged, which was cool for me because I was skipping winters. You know, I was in Melbourne when it was cold up here, and I was up here when it was cold down in Australia.
Oh, that's the ideal situation, the half and half.
Are you kidding me? That was amazing. It was such good times. I was so drunk. But at any rate, you know, I went through this period where I was like, well, maybe I'll try reality. And at a certain point, I just said, why? That sounds fucking stupid. I like this reality. This is my reality. This is who I am, and this is what I do. And I'm totally comfortable with it. I'm totally cool with people having their opinions of me and that I'm a fucking dick or that I'm fucking cool or whatever. But I'm cool with whatever people's opinion are because I kind of just enjoy what I do, man. Like I said, I'm doing the 3 records right now. A 4th one if I can get Bill to go in the studio with the Primate thing again. It's written. We just have to track it. But I mean, how hilarious is it? When I was 20-something, I had no idea or preconceived ideas of even being here when I'm 50-something. Now I'm 50-something. I'm just like, holy fuck, this is weird. But, you know, like, you get one ride, man, and you can choose to do what's expected of you, or you can choose what's within you. And I chose to kind of just follow the punk rock dude to the gig down the street, you know? And I've been following that guy ever since, if you know what I mean. And in a certain context, you know, I've been, yeah, exactly.
That is some brutal poetry right there, baby.
Is it? I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was just kind of stringing together words, man. But you know, for real, that curiosity that because you're young, why would you step outside and follow the punk rock kids to the gig? That doesn't make sense. But I did. And I just sort of kind of just followed that spirit throughout, man. And I just really, if there's anything that I would wish and hope for in this is that some unifying force comes together within our community, because politics will always be fucked. They will always be not of this world. They don't think like normal people, you know. So I just hope that someday a collective bumping of heads realizes that, like, dude, we love being extreme and metal, and fuck off to this being told to hate each other.
Hell yes, that's something I can certainly support and agree with. And lyrically, I've always appreciated Brutal Truth addressing some real life issues. Of course, there was the song Anti-Homophobe, one of my favorite riffs and lyrical things for speaking your truth, speaking your honest truth. And that same thread has also been woven through Napalm Death and other bands, Nuclear Assault, through your bandmates and so on. So much respect to you guys for walking the walk and talking the talk. First Brutal Truth song I ever heard was Walking Corpse, and I had never heard vocals scream like that or gurgle like that either. What's your secret for those brutal growling vocals, Kevin?
Because back in the day, you'd see all these weird people come up with these weird contraptions and things that rituals that they would do to keep their throat from blowing their throat out. And, we did a tour one time with a band called Fear Factory, and like the very first night, in the very first sound check, Bert blew his voice out immediately, and I was just like, maybe this isn't for him. But I think that in terms of maintaining your voice and that sort of thing, I really, it's more about relaxing and letting the car accident happen. I have an idea, like in my head, exactly what I want it to sound like, and I just sort of will it in that world. And fortunately, I've been able to maintain things. And with the specifically the song you talked about, I remember when I opened up the first screen and went, wow, and I got to the end of it. I don't know, do you do vocals as well?
I do. I don't really have much range. So it's kind of like a mix between like Kronos and Tom G. Warrior, a little bit of thrown in there. So
that's great. Yeah. That's enough for me, man. It's
right. Yeah.
Real. But like when you cut loose on a really long scream or something like that, how your brain just kind of just melts a little bit of brain cells falls apart,
Yeah.
And I just remember sitting there and I was like, after I finished it, I was like, okay. And I remember calling, going to the talk back again. He goes, okay, how about, that was great. How about let's double that now. And I'm like, oh God, you gotta be kidding me, man. And I went in and doubled it.
It's the process of becoming a walking corpse slowly. I mean, is it really rock and roll if you don't kill a few brain cells along the way, whether it's by vocal takes or other chemical hobbies?
Right. If you didn't drop brain cells, you didn't do it right.
Well, you definitely did it right on that album and many other great songs throughout your long and storied career.
Perfect. I can't wait for you to hear the rest of the record. It pretty much explains all the stuff. I'll tell you another really cool thing about that record is that it was written and recorded in 4 days.
Of course, punk rock style, baby.
Exactly. We had a few loose ideas, and then we just walked in and riffed it out. Actually, even on the Poison Apple record, we did that with it when we were in Chicago. Buzz was there. We did 7 songs in 1 day. Half that record was done in 1 day. So,
yeah, I think that there's definitely something to be said of capturing that feeling, capturing that lightning in a bottle when you're forced to just perform and deliver in a short amount of time rather than dragging it out. I know in my case, I did a little quarantine death grind project over the course of 2 days, only 13 minutes, but pretty much learning songs and recording them all in about 48 hours from start to finish, from knowing nothing to laying down the finishing licks. And I'm happy the way it turned out. There's a certain rawness that you can't duplicate when you're in that creative flow. You just have to let it go.
And that was the point. Use lightning in a bottle or whatever you call it. Because records are just like catching a moment in time. You know what I mean? You could sit back after a record and coulda, woulda, shoulda bullshit. Like I maybe done this differently, but for me personally, and I come from recording records when there was 2-inch tape to the digital format that we do now with Pro Tools and that sort of thing. But for me personally, it's like, especially with this kind of music, is that like perfection, quote unquote, doesn't make it good. It may sound awesome like on the radio or something like that, but like it doesn't necessarily. When you look at the classics, and when I say the classics, the stuff that I kind of got into, Creator, Pleasure to Kill, things.
Hell
like,
yeah.
when you're listening to him, Fitzor's like running out of steam, but he's just giving it his all, to Possess, 7 Churches, you know what I mean? Where it's the mistakes and the chaos that makes it so brutal. It's not that they emailed the kick drum over. It's the fact that the kick drum is falling down the stairs.
Yeah. There's a lot of those bands, especially on Destruction. I think the Antichrist off of Infernal Overkill. A lot of those classic records, it sounds like the drumming is always just one step away from completely falling apart, but they keep it together. And of course, that Sodom record, especially the early Sodom records, holy hell.
Yeah. And to the point with the first Sodom demo, where it was like, what is going? Actually, it was the second Sodom demo that I heard first, but but it was just like, what is going on here? It's just fucking crazy sounding, man. You know, because they were playing beyond their abilities and giving it 100%. They weren't just laying down a track and then editing, you know, like a lot of drummers do right now.
Yeah, they didn't have the tools to do that, or the finances. You know, everything was on tape. It was a totally different ball game.
And also on top of it, with the tape concept, there were like with Extreme Conditions, part of that record is all the dudes in the band, the engineer, and Colin Richardson, all with little routines on the board. You had little cues, and you had to like pull the fader down here, pull this up here, and if you missed your cue, you got an ass beating because you had to go back through the whole thing and mix. You know what I mean? It was a totally different concept, and I would hope that, like, you know, with the return of vinyl and people's love of that sound, that you know, more and more studios would make 2-inch available, even though there's not so much good quality tape now to do it. But the studio that I built from Mastodon, the dude who runs that has a 2-inch machine, and you know, doing things where you can record and run things through the tape and get the analog tone and then put it into your digital files, or vice versa. Take your Pro Tools and run it through the tape and stuff like that. And there's all sorts of things that people are doing now with recording and stuff. And that may be where we're at right now, where people are going to reinvent how we record things and how we do things. You know, maybe something awesome is on the horizon that's super fucking badass that gets everyone behind it. That's what I'm going to hope for.
Right, we can only hope. I also have a 2-inch machine when I step into a cold shower, if you know what I mean. It's a necrosexual pun right there.
Yeah,
I totally agree. And I think that's one of the things that unfortunately plagues a lot of metal, especially a lot of extreme metal. There are bands out there, and it sounds overproduced. You can tell. The drums are clicky. It sounds too perfect, and that makes it sound sterile. And I think there's definitely something to be said to having to be rough around the edges with the imperfections and everything. And that's something that your bands have always captured excellently.
Yeah, you know, I've been blessed in terms of just like musicians that I've played with. I mean, you could sit there and talk about like Eric Burke. You know, you could talk about you know, Anton. You could talk about Buzz. You could talk about you know, Shane and Danny and Lilker and H and Barker and all these people that are just really gifted at what they do. I mean, like, I'm absolutely the idiot in the room, you know, but you know, it's interesting when you look back on it. You know, I've been very blessed to like have really talented friends, you know.
Indeed, and yourself too, as one of the most criminally underrated vocalists in extreme metal, in my opinion. So yes, it is quite the dream scream team you're part of.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the words, but
yeah,
you know, I don't know. I tend to be comfortable in my own shoes and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm super excited about everything that's going on in terms of music, because it really, in a sea where you're in lockdown, I actually worked the entire time. I'm a carpenter and was deemed essential from second one on. And what I've learned through this is that outside of the obvious things that are going on with the Black Lives Matter and stuff like that, I've realized that, like, outside of all of that, there's a huge class thing going on here, where what I've noticed is that a lot of rich people are sitting in their houses with doing Zoom conferences like this, and they're not at a shortage for people making their lives easier, you know. Ironically, the first things that opened up here were like, get your hair done, get your nails done, get a massage. That's you know, let's get those places open soon, because these people they've been locked up in their houses the whole time. They need to massage, man. Come on, like, what are you talking about?
Where are you based out of?
There's a very fine line between. I guess my point is there's a very fine line between essential and disposable.
Yeah, unfortunately. And definitely riffs are absolutely essential, which leads me to my next question, because earlier you said that people really don't have much choice than just be at home, either work on their art or maybe listen to music if you have the time. So what have you been listening to? What have you been jamming on lately, whether it's during quarantine or the last year or so?
Well, to be quite honest, I've just been writing like a maniac. You know what I mean? I like currently like you know the next VC record is like it's a different realm of punk. It's like there's some loser punk. There's some Husker Du type stuff. But then again, the Lockup record is just super fucking ridiculously brutal. So like I went in and I tracked one record that was just kind of like, like could have been like a Dead Boy song, and then the other song was just right in the toilet fucking brutality, super aggressive, brutal death grind, And to me, that's the greatest, man, being able to just kind of just move around and do whatever interests me at the time, and tracking two different concepts at the same time is super cool. So there's that, and there's the putting it all together with artwork and stuff like that. It's just like, I've been super freaking busy. I know that Shane did like an electronic record, and like I said, he's got the Napalm record that he's just finishing up, and
Danny put out that split in March with Cognizant and Blurring. So
yeah,
you boys have been busy.
Yeah. There's what do you do? You take all this energy and you create something with it. And like, I'm telling you, man, there's that Lockup stuff, super fucking brutal. You said that you'll be fine with it. If you like your fucking warrior and stuff, man, you'll be good with it. But
can't wait.
Exactly. But I think in terms of that kind of stuff, yeah, for sure. I've been writing a lot of stuff. I just heard the new Drop Dead record. I don't know whether you follow that world, but do you know who Drop Dead is?
I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah, they're from Providence. They're old school, fast, super hardcore, fast kind of stuff. And in terms of let's see, what's currently the metal that's blowing me away. There's oh Jesus, what's the name of that band from Australia? If you really want to check out like stuff off the grid, like Australia's polluted with all sorts of fucked up bands. The isolation of being down, you know what I mean? Because I remember, because Brutal Truth went down there like 94, so I've been going down there for years, and it was just like there, it was sort of the same thing with the Japanese music scene, where it's just like so infinitely separate. They don't have these ideas of they have to do the blueprints. For death metal, I come from the Northeast, so I like the dark stuff. I'm friends with a lot of the Florida bands and stuff like that, but in terms of my flavor of death metal, I'm gonna go every time with Incantation or Immolation. I'm gonna dip into my Mortician and stuff like that, because that's just what we evolved around. Those were the shows we played. John booked our first tour across back in 90 or 91, I forget when it was, but out to Milwaukee, 13 shows. To me, I like the darkness. What do you find? What's your interesting taste?
So I grew up listening to thrash metal, really. So a lot of it was like Slayer, of course, and then like Dark Angel, Creator, Sepultura. And then in terms of extreme metal, my first record was Harmony Corruption by Napalm Death, and then Brutal Truth soon after. So I'd say it was like a smattering of different regions. Of course, Mortician is disgustingly brutal. And in fact, back when I was in high school, this is a funny story. I met Roger at a Cannibal Corpse concert. He was like selling primitive recording merch. And we started talking, and he was like, oh, you should check out this one website. There's all these cool bands on it. It's called MySpace. So the person who told me about MySpace was Roger from Mortician in like 2004, 2005. And a couple times I went to his house in Long Pond, Pennsylvania in the Pocono Mountains and bought some merch from him. He was super cool. I was like a 17-year-old, fanboy. But it looked like the Mortician cover from like House by the Cemetery. That was like, that's what Long Pond, Pennsylvania is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Can we just go back to MySpace?
Right? Yeah.
I would much rather troll band pages and absorb music than politics. Can we just do that?
I guess that's the plus side. You have Bandcamp, you have SoundCloud. Those seem to be a lot more constructive, formula.
Well, it's funny that you mention it. Like, Bandcamp it could very well possibly become like part of that 180, because straight up, the royalty rates are absolutely in the favor of the artist, like 80% or something like that. It could be a time when, bands take more control of their music and who knows? Like I said, but I know that Shane is completely infatuated with the concept of Bandcamp because he's a control freak, man. He likes to control his music. He doesn't like, people telling him what to do with it. And
a true enemy of the music business, you could say.
And 100%, as long as I've known him, I mean, like, I can just remember I met him back in 89. Well, we tape traded or whatever, but I met him in 89 at the Grind Crusher tour in Nottingham, England, at the Rock City, where Morbid Angel, Napalm, Carcass, and Bolt Thor played that tour. It was pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of riffs.
That's a whole lot of riffs, man, for sure.
That was before you can just send somebody a link on Facebook or post a YouTube link, get a tape trade. So that's pretty old school. It's funny when you talk about it, it seems like ancient history, but it was only a couple decades ago.
Well, I mean, some things tax you. Like, I'll tell you, I did my last gig back in January, man, and it may as well have been fucking 300 years ago as far as...
Really? Yeah. I was in Las Vegas in January. I saw David Lee Roth in Las Vegas. I'm so happy I went when I did because that seems like ancient history, and it was only 6 months ago. So it's been...
Yeah, I mean, think about like how that, like, so much stuff has smacked your brain that it really is mind blowing. Like, and everyone's like, "Oh God, I can't wait till 2020 is over." And I'm like, "Okay, I guess the election's in November."
Right.
Like, I don't want to think about 21. There's gonna
4
be no
more years of the
there.
shit. Yeah.
There's gonna be no winners there. The only way that we can possibly win is MySpace.
MySpace, yeah.
Makes the return, and people start to appreciate music and fuck off with the noise and the politics. That's, but I don't know. I'm going to choose to have faith. How about that?
You got to have hope. You got to have faith. You got to have riffs, baby. So
without the riffs, you're pretty much empty. I would just say that, with the dudes I'm playing with and various whatevers, man, the riffs are coming. Trust me, man. You're going to get hit with some avalanche riffs, man. There's going to be some raging mayhem, brutal shit. And I'm just going to hope that everyone catches the wave of brutality and focuses on that. That's what's important. Life is hard and complicated. We come to music for love and to escape the hard. And I think somewhere along the line we forgot that. And I think that, I think that MySpace is the answer.
MySpace 2020.
Can we get someone on the phone? We got to get someone on the phone, make that happen.
A wise man in Brutal Truth once said, "Life is short and full of woe, so have yourself a blast." And those are definitely words to live by.
Straight up, keeping it. These things have never changed. There's certain things about you that evolve, but there's certain. I'm completely content with that. Life is short and full of woe, so have yourself a blast. And that's a fact, Jack, man. You know, like everybody needs to. Oh my God, how did metal become politics, man? What the fuck happened there, man? What happened? who fucking dosed who, man? I mean, Jesus Christ, man.
So, Kevin, you have your new Venomous Concept album coming out, Politics versus the Erection, August 20th on Season of Mist Records. What would you like to say to all the heavy metal hellraisers watching at home?
I want everyone to be. It's going to sound so not brutal, man, because like, it's absolutely brutal enough. I just want everyone to find their personal happiness. And to go back with what we just said, you know, like it's short, man. You get one trip, man. Make it count, you know. And don't be so hard on your neighbor, man. They're your neighbor, you know.
One-way ticket, baby. True words to live by, indeed. Hey, Kevin, I want to say thank you for going one-on-one with the Grim One. Keep it brutal. It's been an honor.
Thank you, man. Killer.